Hi, I'm just here this evening with Fr Simon Sleeman at Glenstall Abbey, and for the last couple of weeks or even months we have been chatting about some things that you might find of great help. So I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by your father, and as I said, you know, we had occasion recently to meet and to sit down and to chat. And it's been heartwarming, and it's been enlightening for both of us, I have to say.
It's been a privilege, absolute privilege, and I have benefited greatly from your interventions. I've been through a difficult time in the last year. I've been here in Glenstall. I'm a monk since 1971. You'd have thought I'd have got my act together by now and understood the thing, but I'm still learning, I can tell you, after 50 years. But last year I was asked to go back into the school. I'd been in the school in the 90s and headmaster then, and last year I was asked to go back again, and I was very surprised to be asked, because I'm 68, you know, I feel I'm retired.
You don't look that.
Well,
you don't look
thank
that.
you. And I said yes, and it was a happy fault, as they say, because by December I had depression and anxiety, and by February I was hospitalized. And somehow I knew that I needed this to happen. You know, that my life had been running, like many of us, too fast, too busy, and that I wasn't prepared to stop. So I'm absolutely convinced and certain, if the medics will tell me there's something wrong with my brain, and here's some pills, but I knew that it was depression and anxiety were simply a symptom of something deeper that needed to be attended to. And that was my soul. The depression and anxiety were my soul, my psyche calling out for attention. And they said, you're not going to pay attention, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to pull the plug on your energy, and that will solve this problem. We'll have time together then. So for me, I've had sort of a year's preparation for this time that we're in a way, because I believe this is also about a time that we're all being called to reconnect with our hearts, with our soul, with our source. And that we've been living this sort of illusion of happiness being found in stuff and consumerism, and we're all in it. Just because you're in a monastery doesn't mean you're not. Amazon's doing a roaring trade in Glenstall.
Of course,
So we've got stuff, and trying to fill the God-shaped hole with stuff doesn't work. And I think more and more people are realizing that they bought the package and the package doesn't deliver. So, and now the world has been stopped, and we're all being forced to say, what are our resources? What are spiritual? Because we're spiritual, psychological beings. We're not just physical beings. You know, as I said in the Mass this morning, I said, you know, once we've eaten well, slept well, exercised, done everything we're told to do, we're then left with the same, we're left with the God-shaped hole. We've done everything we're told, but there is this other element, which I think we've neglected. I include myself in that too.
I think you're very right, because for me, seeing it in my work, where people come into me and they're depressed, they're anxious, they're burnt out, as we call it, and a lot of that is absolutely down to the fact that, you know, that they've pushed themselves through that space. So, you know, we call it the recovery space, and that's what we call recovery in sports, that it's, you have to rest and play. And sometimes that we don't have that God recovery space. That's kind of what we're saying here, that, you know, illness is an attempt to draw our awareness to those aspects of our being that we are ignoring. And as I said, we use the recovery space in sport, but, you know, the spiritual recovery, you know,
it's a good image, the recovery space. Yes, I hadn't thought.
You know, where do we find that now? You know, that's the big challenge to people, because they're lost. They seem to be lost, or in the dark nights of the soul, as they often call it in Christianity, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think, you know, I think that the church has. I would be critical of the church, and it's the sort of life I grew up with. You know, it was all focused on external. behavior, do this, do that, obey this, obey that. It was all about exteriority, you know. There was no education of my interior life, my own spirit. This was never language used. It was never mentioned in my education. Education was all about learning facts. No one talked to me about my imagination, my creativity, my intuition. I love that intuition, inner tuition. That was all. That's not on the syllabus, and it still isn't. It still isn't, Michael. And I think that the church too. That's why people are disillusioned with the church. You know, the greatest reason for disillusion with the church is not so much the abuse, in my view. It's much more to do with the fact that it's a glaring lack of ability to deal with the depth dimensions of all of us. You know, it's all based on, as I say, going to mass, going to this, going to that, and being good, and all about sex, and blah, blah, blah. And that's why people are going to the East, to Buddhism, because the Buddhists, as you know, they know about interiority. They know about that.
And it is the biggest challenge. I've always found, you know, again, relating my work to what I do and to what you're talking about, that there's the one thing that I find that is critical, whether it's people in any institution or going to see your doctor this morning or whatever, that they find that there's a language used that it's somehow like a superior language, that, you know, that there's a kind of a language that's created that in some way nearly demeans the person who's hearing it. And you and I just talked about this recently, that there is need for a new language, a new Christianity, a new language, not disconnecting from the real value and source of what it's all about and what healing is all about, because it's a powerful ministry. Healing is a very powerful ministry, and we see it every day. But there is that need to break down the language and to make it simple for people, and that, you know, you have this same inner aspect that you talk about, that inner tuition, that's what we're lacking. We're lacking the language to ignite that spiritual inner tuition.
That's right.
You and I have talked about.
And the guide. There's very few guides around now, you know, who are available to lead people on that path. And that's where I think the church needs to be going. But just two words which I have found to be, I agree entirely, that the eternal truths, I think Jung said, need to be translated into a new language every generation nearly. You know, the language that we grew up with is no longer suitable. But one of the emphasis that we had put on mortality when I was growing up, it was all about death and, you know, what happened after death, and there was either heaven or hell or purgatory. If you were lucky, you got into, you know. Anyway, it was all about this sort of a universe and
abide by the rules.
Exactly.
By the rules.
Exactly. But I came across this lovely concept for me. I'm interested in growth and development, and that Christianity is about finding life. And life to the full. It's not about being miserable or giving anything up. It's about that. Now that takes work, spiritual work. But the word I was going to mention is natality. In other words, Hannah Arendt, she was a German philosopher who created this word, I think, because she said all our emphasis is on death rather than birth. And wait a second, there's no death without birth. Why are we not talking about birth? Natality. And once I started using that term for myself, horizons open up. Whereas we're always focusing on death. I'm not belittling death, that obviously is pretty. But once you look at natality, my vision grows. When I was thinking about death, it's sort of narrowing all the time. So that's one example of translating the message and giving it a new emphasis, which I find more appealing for myself, and I think others may do if we. But that's just an example of a different language, flourishing, growth. You know, that's the sort of language that we need. I think that.
And you know, when we think about it, and having grown up in a Catholic family, you know, because it was our time, there was, for me, the challenge that I always had in my own mind was that, you know, there was always the focus of the suffering on the cross.
Yes.
And you know, while we absolutely respect that process,
Yes.
but I think the greater message was the resurrection, that the greater message was that no matter what suffering that we go through in our lives, that we can overcome it.
Yeah.
You know, this is really
resurrection now.
Correct, that we can resurrect our own lives in this moment in time, because people right now are really challenged out there. And that's the question they're asking. How are we going to resurrect our lives after this blip that's happening?
Because you're right, it's like the period of suffering. It is a period of suffering. And it's funny, but there's suffering, it's an integral part of life. We do our best to avoid it, but there's no way of avoiding it. It's part of, and it's how we process that and accept that, and it's transformational. If you ever go through any suffering or hardship, there's no doubt that it brings life out of it.
Yes.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing.
Yeah.
But it is true. But you know, I think that the crucifixion, in a way, I think always one of the great mistakes that we've made is to take everything literally. Literalism is fatal. And I think even in the Gospels that we've taken a lot of those stories literally. When they were told as metaphors, you know, as symbols for things. And we're the fools because we've taken them literally. You know, it's the real fundamentalists who take the crucifixion.
Yes.
I think that, you know, we are born grasping and selfish in many ways. And somehow Christianity for me is purification, is being reborn. That's the reborn into new life. But that takes work and it takes spiritual practice, but not the spiritual practice that we grew up with, which was, you know, as I say, attending things or behaving well or doing much. But it takes practice of presence.
Yes.
It takes practice of presence to God, you know. It's a whole different discipline that's required of us. It's not that there's no discipline, but there is discipline. It's just of a different type of discipline, which is like meditation, or, you know, we need practices to engage our soul or our spirit. We need silence. We need time out. We need to listen. We need to listen to the voice of the Lord, you know, in our hearts. But that takes time apart. And we're time scarce, you know. Pope Francis calls the rapidification, you know, it's just everything's speeding, and there's no space, and that's what we need. But then we find it quite difficult to stay in space because we haven't practiced it. We're not used to taking time out without distraction, without televisions going, radios going, something happening.
Yeah, and the thing is that, again, when you talk about the literal world, you know, you think that we're waiting to hear this word from the mouth of God.
Yes.
But, you know, the way, again, I look at that is, how can we hear it? Where can we hear it? And sure, it's in the silence, and it's in, you know, they say music is heard in the silence between the notes.
Yes.
And it's a great expression, because to me, it's like when you're out walking in the wood.
Yes.
And you hear a bird singing, that's from the mouth of God. When you hear the wind blowing through the trees, that's from the mouth of God. When you see nature unfolding like we have now in spring, you know, nature's unfolding, it's expressing, you know, the creativity, the evolution, you know, it's all life, it's all around us. But like you said, you know, we've just disconnected from what creation is, what, you know, life is all about, and suddenly we find ourselves now in a space where, oh my God, I'm just waking up to this kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
And isn't it true that that's really what we need to do, is that listening is not just with your ear.
Yes.
That listening is awareness. It's what we're seeing. It's the awareness of the creativity. Isn't that what you're thinking?
Lovely. I think that's absolutely right. And I think that I heard a phrase once, and I thought it was very accurate. It said, if you want to find peace or happiness, get connected. Get connected. Now, it's a simple phrase, but if you think of our lives today, they're increasingly disconnected. You know, they're increasingly disconnected from nature. You know, I was just thinking this morning, really that disconnection from nature began when we started agriculture 10,000 years ago, you know, and managing the environment. It all became an object that we were manipulating rather than that we're part of. You know, that we are part of nature. It's not that this is something we can, I think, disconnected from nature. We've become disconnected from our own bodies, our own souls. We become disconnected from good values, you know. I think that values, we need new values to live by, that will guide us. Disconnected from the sacred, you know, all these disconnections, disconnected from each other. You know, I was just thinking today that self-isolation is something we almost aspire to. When I think of the very wealthy now, you know, they're self-isolated. They've built these great big houses, and they have got locks and gates and guards and everything else, you know, and we're aspiring, and you go around the country, more and more people aspiring to this, living in isolation. Mm-hmm. And it's the reverse we need, is connection, connectedness. We're all interdependent, depending on each other. And this moment is crying out for that interconnectedness and that recognition of that and dependence on each other. We can't survive otherwise.
And you know, the thing is that in the modern world, with all our technology and all our amazing cars and our planes and, you know, our ability to travel from A to Z and around this world in 24 hours, but now in this moment in time, people need each other. You know, why has it come to something like this for us to realize that we need each other, and that our health, our life depends on how each other behaves?
Yes.
I mean, if we could just grasp that and bottle that and sell that and see how the family unit is so important, because that's something that has broken down for sure. And it's that need to be together and to work together. That togetherness is never more valued now, isn't it?
And I think, dare I say it, like my depression and the anxiety that I experienced, and it was my experience, was a gift to me, an absolute gift, because it brought me back to a space and it healed me in a way which I longed for. It was painful, difficult. And I think in a strange way that what we're going through the moment is a gift, because there was nothing else going to stop us so abruptly. I mean, that all the planes could be just stopped. I mean, how?
Life could be stopped.
Life, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just extraordinary. So I think this is a gifted moment for us if we can grab it and say, listen, we've been going down the wrong path. That's what sin is. Sin isn't picadillos that we listed on. Sin is missing the mark, that you've gone down, there's no life down that way. That's what sin is, why it's sinful.
It's the perception of what sin is.
Yeah.
You know, it's the perception. We often see sin as being, you know, committing the heinous crimes and all of that kind of thing. No. But it's the sinning, it's what we're doing within ourselves, because I always say to people, you know, that whenever you want to do something, ask yourself two questions.
Right.
Why am I doing it, and how does it serve me?
Okay.
Why am I doing it? How does it serve me? So it actually correlates with what you're saying, Simon, that absolutely, you know, we go down different paths and we see our young people going down different paths, and we've all chosen pathways, and in some way down along that path, something has emerged that has said, no, hold it.
Yes.
This isn't working.
Yeah.
And for some reason or other, this is how I would see this, that what's happening in society today is that we were going down a path that was created for us through a screen, through our IT platforms, and that path was being directed by somebody or something or organizations or whatever that has no interest in our soul, our spirit, our heart. No interest.
Money.
No interest, exactly.
Economics.
Economics. And that is why, you know, we and you and I have talked about this over the last few weeks, about the need to understand that, what you called earlier on, that time together, that heart space, this isolation.
Yeah.
You know, that you're never isolated when you're on your own. There's
No.
always something that you can get in touch with, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Reconnecting with our own. I mean, what it came out of the depression and anxiety was really reconnecting with my soul, you know, which I wasn't going to do it otherwise. I was distracted, reading 10 books, searching everywhere outside.
Yes.
For the truth.
Yes.
Outside,
Correct.
it has to be there. It has to be. And if God came calling, I probably wouldn't be around. I'd be out by another self-help book or spirituality book. I mean, I'm way over the legal limit for spiritual books and spiritual or different practices.
You should be put off the road.
I'd be put off the road.
Yes.
But you keep looking outside because you hope, and the answer is in fact on the inside.
Yeah.
So you know, but that requires help and
direction
and community together, because you can't do this alone. I'm so lucky to be living in a beautiful place, Danstock, which I'm glad to say there are many people walking here and enjoying the environment. But I'm lucky that I'm part of a community too. You know, that has its negatives too, and I won't go into them now. But living with 30 other people, you can imagine. Yes. But it has its challenges. But it is lucky.
Challenges, I suppose, about the word.
Exactly. But that I think ultimately we've got to recreate community. That's where it is. One of the really interesting things for me over the last number of years has been J.P. McManus's initiative of Team Limerick Cleanup. You know, every Good Friday, people in Limerick go out to pick up litter.
Yes.
And I said to her, how is it that litter could bring so many people out and together as community? You know, if you'd mentioned litter, I mean, the church was trying, the GA, but litter was a uniting, and it was a great feeling. People went out and picked up. It didn't matter, GA, Protestant, Catholic, litter, it's neutral.
Yeah.
So building that sense of community, it's absolutely great. And this is the wake-up call again for that.
Yeah. You know, when and it was a privilege to have worked with you, Simon, over the last number of weeks and whatever, but I've learned from yourself as well, which was great for me, because we talked about things, and I'm looking to, you know, to bring a new language, a new model of living into people's lives. Having spent 30 years trying to guide people back to health, I always felt that there was something going to happen that was going to make us step up and realize this, which is very powerful. And, you know, when we talked about it first, I was interested in the whole idea, because I came up with this 888 model. You and I, we've chatted about this.
No, it's great.
The 888 model, you have 24 hours in a day, 8 hours for living, 8 hours for working, and 8 hours for sleeping. And when we look at the imbalance in that, but then it was amazing, because I saw this was a part of the ethos of Benedictine and Benedict, and this is very much part of it, of the core of Benedict, wasn't it?
It's extraordinary. I mean, we live, just for people simply, that the rule of St. Benedict, which is our guiding document, it's not a rule so much as a guidebook, but it was written in 480 by Benedict of Nursia in Italy. And he was living at a time when Roman culture was going down the Swanee, down the sink, you know, down. It was collapsing. Morally bankrupt, it was falling apart. And he said, I'm never going to find life living in this culture. It's not going to happen. So he left it, and he said, I'm going for the hills, and I'm going to set up my own space, and I'm going to put values in place and a way of life that will ensure that he says it in the rule, people's hearts will enlarge, and they'll run with the unspeakable joy of love. That's the goal. He wanted an environment to make sure that happened. And I think in a way, that's what we're looking for. And it's very interesting what he sees as the essential ingredients to make sure that people are, the monks' hearts enlarged. I don't say that we're doing it very well, but that is what his rule. The core message.
Yes.
And it's very interesting and we could do this another time, just to examine the core, what was Benedict's foundations for community living. It's a good question I think for us all to ask ourselves. I mean, I think the goal we all want is life and feeling alive. It's not so much meaning, it's that we want to feel full of life and vitality, in flow.
And nobody's really saying that you can't enjoy the nice things in life and be successful in business and all of that.
Absolutely.
But
right.
it's the abandonment of the spiritual aspect of your life. It's the abandonment, and in a way that's what's happened.
That's right.
You know, now whether that's a fault of the church or whether it's a fault of our educational system or whether it was just the way we got, sucked into something that maybe we fed off within media and all of that kind of thing. But that is what has happened, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not that we've abandoned God, because God exists in all forms.
Yeah.
But we've abandoned our own spirituality, our own need for spirit. And so,
absolutely. And the Irish people really have a sense of that.
You do, absolutely.
But the dangers that we lose it now, and this is a chance to back, and say...
These are biblical times, would you say, Sam?
Yeah, but good idea. An excellent image, yeah. I think I was going to say, actually, one of the things I was going to say this morning at Mass was, in an older generation, an older era, we'd be running off to the priests and the prophets in the Old Testament saying, what's gone wrong? Yeah. What have we done wrong? Tell us what we've done. God is angry with us,
Yeah.
Okay, we all say poo-poo to that. We know it's that with our modern information rather than wisdom age, the Old Testament was a wisdom time. There were elders who in our age, which is very much information driven and facts and a cause-effect medical model. Oh, depression, here's the
chemicals,
pill. Your brain isn't working well, take the pill. Never getting at what the real thing is. So we live in that world which is cause-effect, and we explain the coronavirus by there's a virus, therefore that's it. But I think you're right that they weren't wrong, those people in the Old Testament, in a way. They were using a metaphorical language to say, guys, you're off track. You're off track. The prophets were shouting at the people, there's no hope for you in this. It's not that you're annoying God or just it's that it's bankrupt.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. It won't give you that.
And I had this image when we chatted about this recently, that when Christ came to the temple, and all of the people were gambling and doing all their things and whatever, there was total contrary to what the word of the divinity was about, the total contrary to what living is about.
Yes.
And it's not that we're trying to impose religion here. When we're chatting, it's what we're trying to do is to break it down into simple terms in modern day life. And if you were to look at your life today and put it all on the table, just like Christ when he came into the temple, he cleared the tables. And it's like we're asking people to do that now. It's like when people come into my clinic, I'm asking them to do that. Throw it all on the table, now clear it and start afresh. And start with the experience. And isn't this kind of what we've chatted about?
Yeah.
So you can imagine that image. It can be very powerful.
Oh, it's a great image.
It's an image that we can clear all of the past, that we can overcome the depression like you did, like you're working towards yourself, Simon. And that doesn't mean tomorrow after we might not be depressed, but that we can recover, resurrect, but we have to clear the tables.
Have to clear the tables, absolutely. And religion, it comes from the word to reconnect. That's what it's about. And we've gone so far away from what it's actually meant to be. We should be providing rituals for people that are enlivening. We have
daily rituals.
Daily rituals, yeah.
That's important.
We have a ritual on a Saturday night which is called the Resurrection Office, which the first time we performed it, I came out of the church saying, oh my goodness, I feel different. I feel energized. I feel life. I don't get this too often when I go to church. Yes. I think, well, what's happened? And then I went back and looked at it. And I said, okay, all my senses were engaged. There were lots of candles. There was incense to smell. There was beautiful music that had good frequency, chant, polyphony, music. I was hearing, I was seeing beautiful things. I was smelling beautiful things. And then at the end, we came in a corona, a sort of a half circle around the altar, sang this beautiful polyphony again, and then we walked down the church to Our Lady's statue and sang. So my whole body was engaged in the ritual, and hence it had a transformative effect. It was one, the people, I often say this now, but the church has all these, it's got all these things,
elements,
yeah. Incense, wonderful chant. I mean, we still sing the Gregorian chant, which is, it affects you. I don't know about you, but I know it affects me.
Absolutely, yeah.
These are all things the church has, but it's let go. All this, and to help, these are all meant to help. It's not meant to be in there, it's meant to help us, lift us up, so that we get this life. That's what the life of the church.
And the thing what happened, Sam, I firmly believe, is that, particularly from around 1990 or just a little bit after that, we had the emergence of the internet.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's like that, in a way, that religion, spirituality was going down this little boring and was traveling on nice and slowly. And suddenly we had this highway, this internet highway.
Yes.
That everything was faster.
Yes.
Do you get what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
That that what happened was that we just went so fast, and then suddenly the internet, because we're creatures of habit, and so on, that we were surfing this net on a continuously basis to the degree now that we are obsessed and addicted to it.
Absolutely.
And it is that obsession and addiction to this speedway, this highway, this web network system, and that's where I think it be going. Albeit that people can say the negative aspects of the church that come through sex abuse and all that kind of thing, and it's very easy to blame that, and it's very easy to use that as an excuse. Oh, I'm disconnecting from the church, but you can do all of that, but there's still a part of you that there's still that divinity, that heart still exists. You still need to feel that, and you get that same sense that it was around that time that the development of the internet.
I think there's an awful lot of truth. That speeding up, people started living the fast life rather than the good life. Get quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker.
The Amazon world.
Yeah, and you get caught up in that. You get caught up in it, addicted to it. And addiction, I think the best way I have envisaging what addiction is, and most of us are addicted to something or other. I don't think there's any of us. It could be shopping or anything, but it's what you use to soothe the ache or the pain, or what I describe as the God-shaped hole that we've left or created, and that we don't have enough skill or knowledge in the church or in society to help us look after that space. I mean, for me, if you ask me where would I find ritual done best, I'd say go to a spa, because the spa, they know what. If you go to a spa, lovely music, candles, incense, they work your body, and you come out. But you come out, and I've been to spa, I've come out, I said, something missing. Something missing. I'm missing something. And it's that touching my spirit, my heart, the sacred. The sacred is missing.
In the heart.
In that experience of the spa. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but I come out feeling there's a bit has not been even if they massage me or done anything else.
But isn't that the problem? Is that we want to nourish all aspects of us, other than the aspect that is so powerful.
That's right.
Where do we turn to when we have a problem?
Right.
If somebody's diagnosed with some disease, where do we turn to?
That's right.
We can have all the spas, and that's all great, and it nourishes the kind of the outer elements of who we are. But it's a little bit like the iceberg. You can shine the top of the iceberg, but underneath the water you have far greater amounts of it. And isn't that really what this is about? It's about getting down into that depths.
It is.
Sometimes it's cold and dark.
It is.
But it's getting down into those depths that can be so powerful.
And you need support. You can't really do this by yourself. It's too scary. It can be scary and it can be difficult. And we are a group. We're a tribal group. We evolved only 100,000 years, 200,000 years. Nothing. We were all living in groups, and that's in our DNA still, and we function best together and support, not dependent on, but in the best sense, working together share and to lift each other up so that we find that flow in life. That's what Christianity should be bringing us, that flow, that vitality. That I often think that Jesus walked along the Sea of Galilee and he met Simon and he met, I can't remember the three he met, anyway, he met 3 or 4, and he said, they were fishing, he says, listen, follow me.
Yeah.
And they said yes. They didn't say, good, what's the pension plan like? Is the pay good? They said, no, this, and I'm always convinced that they saw this person and they said, this person has it.
Yeah.
If you're prepared to drop everything, you know, it's like a big rock star.
But the connection was different, you see, wasn't it?
Okay.
You know, that people, people would often say that, that people have this sense,
Yes.
that we are creatures of sense, that we are creatures of feeling, we're creatures of feeling.
Yeah.
And it's that gut feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you go back to those times, those people, I would say, resonated at a frequency, we call it a frequency, resonated at a frequency that they had this sense and feeling that, oh God, that's good, I need this. And, there is something there was a higher power involved.
Yes.
And many people in the modern day life use this same sense. In actual fact, we can scientifically explain it now. But it's that inner sense, again, that if you're not in touch with it, well then you're not being guided in the right direction. And
you're going to continually feel empty and go out trying to fill it. As I have done.
We all have done.
Yeah,
we all have done.
I'm meant to be sort of a specialist. You think that they'd be in a monastery, somehow you'd have got
you have a direct line.
Well, you got your act together on this thing like that,
Yeah.
But we're all struggling. There's no one else. But I say a prayer every day. I say yes, I will believe, I do believe, and I'm going on, and I'm going on. And you talked earlier about the nature and the unfolding of the wonderful unfolding of nature and divinity. I sometimes find that difficult, but to get that perception or sense of the sacred in that. But here's what I feel often. I get a nudge, I get these sort of nudges to action that I'm sure is the Spirit giving me. But you've got to have your ears, you've got to be tuned in to the right frequency. That's again a spiritual discipline, that we've got to tune in. You can't expect God to be all the time available just when you tune in, that somehow our antennae need to be adjusted, and that you feel, as I say, I've had nudges in my life, okay, go this, blank, and but you have to be listening and working to hear that little tapping.
Yeah, the modern day situation about life, in that we look at our phone and we're always getting bits of information in a sense of it's a headline. I mean, your editors of your newspapers, just this headline, just to draw your attention, the article may contain nothing to do with the headline, but there's this little bits of information. And now our system is so much overloaded from these bits of information. I mean, the same bits of information from a spiritual perspective were very much written in the Old and the New Testaments, and indeed all the great spiritual teachers and writings and so on. And the thing it's about probably now it's time, as we said earlier, to bring new bits of spirituality in and use the platforms that you and I are using now. In the past, people sat down and they read a book and they picked it up, and now people don't seem to have time for that. But I think there's a great opportunity now in the platforms, the IT platforms, that the pulpit becomes...
Oh, well done. Yes, this is
the new pulpit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a new pulpit. It's a new way to dialogue.
And what I'm finding is the new, clergy are people like yourself, the priest, there's a whole new... I'm meeting more and more people, Russell Brand, I'm listening to people, lay people who are shouting the message louder than the clergy are shouting the message. So I think it's a whole rearrangement of things. And I think all the churches that we have around, I think parish as a concept is probably gone, it's going to gradually, but I think there'll be community centres where people will gather. That will never go, I think monasteries could flourish in a way that they'd be spiritual hotspots,
Yes.
where people could click in and go out again to do their daily thing. And there's some of us who are really here concentrating on this issue of life and given the privilege and the time to do that. But just one other thing I was just thinking about, attention. That's the most valuable commodity we have at the moment, and that there are people trying to grab it all the time. And don't believe that you can, Google and all these crowd are paying the brightest people huge sums of money to come up with more and more sophisticated ways of getting your and my attention. And so don't feel, so that's when I talk about spiritual discipline. It's spiritual, it's technological detox. Turn it up, giving, coming back. Mind your precious self, and it's particularly your attention. And that does, we used to have fasting and all about sexuality and all that stuff. That's not where it's at now. It's much more at, discipline is about paying attention to the right things and detaching from a lot of technology. It's good, it's got its benefits, but we can't allow ourselves to be taken over by this thing, which it has taken over for many people, and it's emptying them, not filling them, it's giving the illusion.
And like you say, we cannot control what we see in our IT platforms. It's put in front of us.
Absolutely.
Our children, they can't just go on and say, well, I'm going to look at this today. No, because while they're looking at this today, something else is popping up. So we have all these pop-ups. So we're not in control of these pop-ups. And that's the danger.
That is the absolute, and they're stealing our attention, and we don't even know.
Stealing our energy.
And our energy.
Which is more.
Exactly, emptying us. And we don't even know it.
Yeah.
We don't even recognize it, So as I say, there need, along with a new language, we need new practices, which are not meant to be, heavy-duty practices that I'm a Catholic, I've got to do this and that. Yeah. These are practices which will lead to life.
Connect to life.
Connect to life, exactly. And a lot of the things we are bought into disconnect us from life, really.
It's so powerful, and in the present situation, Simon, is there any message that you would like to give to people of, just a message of hope, a message of trust, a message of just be patient and get to know family, and just use this time now that we have space and time, and to use it wisely, because a lot of people are in a dark space now. Fear, worry, anxiety.
It's horrendous.
What would the message be from yourself, from church, from Benedict? What would the message be from Benedict?
That's a good. Well, he would say community. I think two things. One is, I think that simple message of, if you want to find peace and happiness, get connected. Get connected to nature, not as an object. Nature, we're part of it. Get connected to the sacred in yourself to find the divine. Get connected to others. All sorts of gardening. I think get connected, that's one. Mm-hmm. And the second thing I'd say, over 50 years in the morality, if anybody asks me, what's the most consistent thing I have done? And it is to believe. It's to go on, despite myself mostly, saying, I do believe, help my unbelief. That there is hope. And hope is, as Havel said, it's not optimism. It's believing that there's meaning in what's happening. And to trust that. So hope is a very central thing to Christianity. And even in the darkest moments, which I've had my own share of them in the last year, that hope that this is leading me, like the Israelites led out. This is our exodus. We've been under Pharaoh in Egypt.
Yes.
I mean, all those stories apply
so
to
relevant.
So relevant. We've been slaves in Egypt, and we're going to get a chance to leave to find the promised land now. The exodus. It's.
There is light at the end of the tunnel.
There is light at the end of the tunnel, I'm sure. But there's big transformation, and it's not easy, and it's painful. But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yes.
I know that's not a very positive note to end, but that is it. It's a period of it is a period of transformation, and it's change. And as we know, change is difficult for people. You say John Henry Cardinal Newman said, he says, to live is to change, and to have lived well is to have changed often. And I think there's an awful lot of truth in that. I love that there was a Victor Cayenne. It's a good story. Victor Cayenne was the guy who liked the Remington razor so much that he bought the company.
Yes, yes.
And he knew he had to keep fluid, and he was a businessman, and he knew if he was to keep up with everything that's going on, he'd have to keep himself fluid and moving and changing. So every day he'd get up and he'd change the side he started to shave on.
Yes.
He'd change the way he went to work, changing little things to keep himself flexible so that he could deal with the difficult times that he faced and make good decisions. So again, I think that's, for me, I often start shaving on the other side just to wake myself up, saying, wait a second, you've been doing that every day this way. You're getting stuck, congealing, and we've got to stop ourselves congealing because
and I think it's great to look at it that way, because I think this is an opportunity of reflection. This is a time for reflection. It's a time for resurrection. It's a time for reconnecting. All of the messages of those within the wisdom of our elders, within the church, within our own culture, within our own community, that message was always to trust, to believe, to have faith that we will overcome this. And I think that they are very powerful things, that in the darkest hour, there is that little spark of light, and I think to hold on to that, and that's why we have this little candle here, is to show that that there is that spark of light in all of us. And I've really enjoyed the chat.
Great, I have too.
And no doubt we're going to do a number of them, because we could take all of this, Simon and I, because Simon has been teaching in biology, so we can take all of this theory, if you want to call it, theology, if you want to call it, philosophy, whatever, and we can break it down and actually understand how it now affects our body. That's something that we should.
That is extraordinary. I agree. That is a huge change. I mean, it's a huge change. It's even just, let me mention one last thing, which I'm going to do. But we all know to go out in the woods we're all told, go out into nature. It's good for you. And you say, oh, okay, I'll go out to the woods. But now there is actual science behind that. There are temperines. The plants, the forests are giving out temperines, which are compounds in the air that we breathe and that help our immune system. So it's not just a good idea, or your mother says go out and walk.
Exactly.
It's actually, we now have, as you say, the science is there to back up what we've been, people have known people knew by intuition, they knew it by whatever it was. But we're sort of more sceptical, saying, I prefer to watch the telly than go out and walk in the woods. Or if you walk by the beach, these things, you feel better at the end of it.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
Absolutely. Well, that's our message today. Get out, reconnect, resurrect, reassess everything, and know that this will pass.
This will pass.
And have the image of it. If you were to have an image of yourself, let's say in June, what would that image be? And to work slowly towards that, and hold on to that image, and that new opportunities will emerge, new circumstances will be created, and all for the better. We are going to emerge out of this situation in a much more positive, creative, compassionate.
Absolutely, it's a huge opportunity for us to reorientate our life so that we find true life, resurrected life now, not when we're dead.